Hello and welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name is Carver, and originally I thought I was going to be alone tonight, but for those of you that are on YouTube watching with visuals, I've got my cat here snuggled up on the bed behind me, which is pretty fun. So although Ginny is not my original co-host like Jacob, we've still got a jam-packed show for you tonight. We'll be covering the 2-1 win against FC Köln, the 2-0 win against Augsburg, an exciting and much-needed BVB Frauen update, some team news with club decisions on contract extensions, and then finally ending with previewing the last game before the spring international break against Hamburg. So let's start by taking it back to just last week where Dortmund took a quick trip to neighboring city FC Köln, where they've actually won 5 of their last Bundesliga meetings between the two sides, and Dortmund were looking to continue their streak after some recent setbacks in the Champions League and also domestically in the Der Klassiker a few weeks back now. Niko Kovac going into this game made 4 changes to the starting 11 compared to the previous match against Bayern Munich. Serhou Guirassy, Julian Brandt, Julian Ryerson, and Remy Bensebaini replaced Fabio Silva, Adeyemi, Yan Couto, and Emre Can, again, who has a torn ligament and is out for the rest of the season. Chukwuemeka was unavailable for this game with a muscle strain, to my knowledge. Filippo Mane is still in recovery, but Niklas Süle did return to the squad here. So some revolving doors in terms of availability and some rotation in the starting 11. And this game surprisingly started in Köln's favor. Dortmund had to weather the storm that first half hour, conceding several corners, a few fouls leading to some set pieces, and Köln even were able to generate some decent chances in those opening 15, 20 minutes. And they were able to control the flow of the game well into the first half. Again, well past, first half hour mark. Even with Guirassy opening the scoring in the 16th minute, Köln were still able to create spells of possession, to have some chance creation. And it wasn't until the red card just before halftime where Dortmund go up with a numerical advantage where fans could actually finally take a breath, right? It wasn't a guarantee by any means, but you are up a goal, you are up a man, you have a break, we can adjust some things, and then hit the ground running going into the second half. But Köln actually made some changes of their own. They stuck to their game plan. They came out strong in the second half and made it difficult for Dortmund once again, making this yet another classic, unnecessarily nervy finish for Borussia Dortmund as a whole for this game. There were some really nice combination plays that we saw in the second half that led to our second goal, actually, and we saw glimpses of that in the Augsburg game too. But in the end, Dortmund did just enough to cross the line and collect all 3 points, despite some late drama too. Köln pushed all the way to the end. And after the game on Sky, Niko Kovac mentioned that we won a game today that we didn't play well. And the coach is then allowed to be angry. Last week we lost against Bayern, but I still liked the way we played. Today we won, but I didn't like the way we played at all. We weren't sharp enough. If everyone's a meter short, then you're missing the tackling, you're missing the challenges, and ultimately you're missing what you need to stay in the game, which is very well said, and it encompasses what we saw a lot throughout this game. And there were, of course, a lot of takeaways that Dortmund should consider going into the tail end of the season here. We still have a few games left. We got about 2 months. We need to be shoring some things up. This isn't the first time that Dortmund have been up a goal, up a man against a side that they should be beating, and we're making it way too complicated, right? And we're going into this next game against Augsburg, who is in great form. In 2026, Augsburg collected 16 points compared to our 19. And while you could look at Augsburg's schedule, they've played a handful of relegation level sides, sure. They've also beaten Bayern Munich, and they've drawn against Freiburg. So Dortmund cannot enter the same game with a similar mentality and mindset compared to Köln, because there will be yet another harsh wake-up call. Looking at the lineup here for Augsburg, this is the first time since October 28th that Dortmund has started without Serhou Guirassy or Fabio Silva at the 9. And they were still actually pretty threatening. This was a pretty different performance and overall very, very positive compared to the Köln game. And there were some positives from Köln, sure, but there were also some other takeaways that were not so positive either, right? Dortmund looked much more focused. We played to our strengths here against Augsburg, the set pieces being one of them. Dortmund have scored now from at least one set piece in 9 of our last 10 Bundesliga games. Julian Ryerson delivered his 8th assist from a corner this season. It's the most in the league. And we did well outside of set pieces with just attacking in space behind Augsburg's back line. When you have an attacking front line like Bayer and Adeyemi, that combination, you got a lot of pace to burn. And once we built that pressure and attack, once we started to get into the flow of things, control the flow, use our momentum from the Westfalenstadion, from the Südtribüne, the home fans, we were able to sustain that pressure from the quality of our team. And again, just the momentum that we built from that first half. And, we went on to hit the bar twice in the first half alone. So it could have easily been 2 or 3-0 by halftime. There was some good combination plays. And against the ball, Dortmund, I think, did a good job of playing pretty organized, pretty compact. And while Augsburg did have a moment or two where they were able to find space in behind our own back line, we kept them at bay. We did a good job of not allowing them much of anything going forward. And that second half was kind of more of the same, right? It was just tough for Augsburg to break us down. Reggiani scores his first senior goal, youngest Italian goal scorer in Bundesliga history. And you could see what it meant to him with the pure emotion that is just flowing through him and oozing out of him on full display as the ball goes in. And that's what it's all about, right? Celebrating in front of the Südtribüne. Schlotterbeck is trying to hype him up. The team's hyping him up. You see a lot of emotion from him. He goes over and celebrates with Inacio as well, another fellow Italian. And outside of the goal, Reggiani just had a solid performance. He was solid defensively, 7 defensive contributions, 10 passes into the final third as well. So with the ball, against the ball, Reggiani looked very, very promising. A solid performance from him, from a very young center half. Again, Italian as well. So, the communication barriers are there, and he didn't look out of place. He looked very up to speed. Outside of Reggiani, just another individual shout out. I got to give more emphasis to Joe Bellingham again on another great performance. Almost had a worldie of a goal, found space in between lines to pick the ball up, to progress play a bunch. He picked out runs from Adeyemi going in behind Augsburg's back line. When against the ball, he had some crunching slide tackles. He continues to cover space extremely well. So Joe, another fantastic performance. I got to continue to shout him out because his form is continuing to rise and his confidence is continuing to rise. And he's finding himself right at home in that midfield, especially slotted next to Felix Metscher as well. And after this Augsburg game, after 26 out of the 34 match days so far, Borussia Dortmund already has one more point than the entire 24-25 season, which goes to show you pretty decent season so far, right? But also just looking back how tragic last season actually was and how we finished. Even though Kovac was able to pull ourselves up to the table, it wasn't too far long ago that Borussia Dortmund was in 11th place in the midst of last season. So it was a glorious weekend in terms of, again, beating the record from last season, right? Clean sheet, 3 points. All of Hoffenheim, Bayern, and Leipzig dropped points as well. So we have teams below us that were widening the gap. Team in front of us, Bayern Munich, were shortening that gap. And the likes of Leipzig are dropping points too, which is always fun, right? So it was just a very solid weekend overall. Dortmund put on a pretty complete and mature performance. And for the 12th time this Bundesliga season, we got, again, a clean sheet, which is something that we only were able to achieve 7 times last season as well. And I think that you can attribute that to, again, Niko Kovac's stability in defense. Sure, there's moments that we've talked about this season where, it slips through the cracks. There's been some sort of mental lapse. Dortmund put themselves in unnecessary positions. But a lot of those so far, in my opinion, have come down to kind of individual errors, again, mental lapses from an individual standpoint. But when you look at the overall bigger picture, there is some trajectory and improvement there in terms of stability and defense from Niko Kovac. The clean sheets attest to that. The table finish last season, much, 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 much better so far. Again, glorious weekend and 2 wins in a row to bounce back from 2 losses in a row. So we're looking pretty promising going into this international break. And speaking of breaks, going to take a step away from the men's side into BVB Frauen. Much needed update, very exciting update. BVB Frauen have not played a competitive game in the Regionalliga West since December 6th. 3 months of friendlies and district tournaments, and they've come back with a bang. And we'll get to this weekend's game that they played against Gladbach 2 in a minute. But first, I want to talk about what's been happening off the field, which is just as exciting. First, we have the signing of Alex Popp, which is a true statement signing for BVB Frauen. Alex Popp, if for those of you who don't know, Olympic champion, 3-time Champions League winner with Wolfsburg, 7-time German champion, 13-time DFB Pokal winner, 3-time German Footballer of the Year, captain of the German national team, and now, and come a few months' time, Borussia Dortmund player. And if you look on Dortmund's website, Dortmund's YouTube channel, there are a handful of really good interviews that I highly encourage you guys to check out. But just a few bits that stuck out to me so far from these interviews. One was actually through Pop's journey through youth football as a woman, saying, until I was 14 or 15, I didn't even know there was a women's Bundesliga. My horizons were limited to what I saw on my plate. And she goes on to talk about Dortmund a bit more. My heart beats for this club. I'm slowly approaching the end of my career, and I also have to listen to my body. I didn't want to miss the opportunity to play in a BVB jersey. BVB's interest made me proud from the very first moment. I immediately had a huge grin on my face. And for me, it's very exciting to be able to help develop the club's successful path in the future. So she talks a bit more, again, coming to the end of her career. She doesn't know how much career she has left, how much football she has left. One of the first two things to go are your legs. But this is a signing that is beyond that, right? This is someone who's got a very well-established career of success at the highest level for women's football, and on a number of occasions, domestically, internationally, with her national team as well, not just internationally in terms of European football. And she wants to continue building on that, and of course, play for a club that she has a lot of respect and love for. And just to touch on a bit more about her goals for Dortmund going forward, she said, we all know Borussia Dortmund's plan. They want to get to the Bundesliga as quickly as possible. I want to help them get to the Bundesliga as soon as possible and establish ourselves there. But first, we need to see which league I'll be starting in. Then, together with the team, I want to set my sights on promotion. Off the pitch, I want to contribute as well. How do I further professionalize? What's the next steps in terms of infrastructure? What else is needed? This is all exciting too. I've experienced a lot, and this is a rebuilding phase, and that's why I want to be involved not only off the pitch, but off of it as well. So again, just emphasizing the points that she's going to be massive to have on the team. She's going to be massive on the field, scoring goals, contributing in a number of ways, but it's also going to be included off the field. Her leadership qualities, just the pure presence in the locker room. This is huge for BVB Frauen. And then just a quick quote from Managing Director Svenja Schlenker at BVB. He said, Alex's signing is a strong statement about our ambitions. The fact that a player of her caliber consciously chooses Dortmund makes us incredibly proud and sends us a strong signal about the importance and future of women's football in Dortmund. So very, very exciting, right? And then outside of Alex Popp, we have appointed a new sporting director as well, Ralph Kellerman, who is now, again, sporting director of women's football. He signed a contract from June of 2029. And then I have a quick quote, actually, again, from Svenja Schlenker saying, Kellerman's resume is studded with extraordinary achievements, both as a coach and as a sporting director. He was our absolute top choice for the sporting director position because not only he has an extremely large network, but also a very good feel for squad composition and development. Ralph will play a key role in shaping and further developing our sporting direction in the coming years, and we are very proud that he has chosen BVB. As a coach of Wolfsburg, from, again, Kellerman, he has won the Champions League twice, the Deutsche Meister 3 times, the DFB Pokal 4 times. In 2014, he was named FIFA Women's World Coach of the Year, and during his time as a sporting director, he led Wolfsburg to 4 more league titles, 7 more cup victories. So these kind of signings like Pop are going to continue to come. Of course, maybe not so much of that stature, but higher level signings as Dortmund continue to climb through the ranks. So very, very exciting for BVB Frauen on and off the field. Players, coaching staff, management, all alike, very aligned, clear ambitions to bring Dortmund, the women's team, to the Bundesliga. Very, very exciting stuff. We've been covering the team for a few years now, and we are right there. We're close. There's still some work to do, but the goals are set and the team has a clear direction of how to get there. And then just taking it back to on the field. So BVB Frauen have won the last friendly before returning to domestic football. So just about 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, they played Leverkusen's senior team. Leverkusen 2 are in the Regionalliga West. They were able to arrange a friendly with Leverkusen's senior team and won that game. A few days later, they went into the Regionalliga West, back to domestic competition, back to competitive football, where they played Gladbach 2, and they won that game 4-1. It's the first competitive game, and first win of 2026. We continue on that trajectory. BVB does have a few other tougher opponents before the season's end, which is in May here. They play Essen's U21, and they play Bielefeld as well. They're pretty close to us in the table, but BVB Frauen remain in second from the Regionalliga West, and the only team above them is FC Köln's U21. And Köln, however, are playing Bielefeld this weekend, and will still have to play Essen and Leverkusen too. So I would argue they've got a bit more of a tougher competition these next 6 or so weeks for the end of the Regionalliga West. A lot of great, exciting things going on for BVB Frauen right now, and we'll continue to cover them. They've got a game this weekend as well that we'll cover next week. Taking it back to the men's team, lots of team news for them as well off the field. Dortmund are yet again planning for another big summer rebuild. There's been a lot of discussions this season from Kale, from Ricken, from just management in general, from Jacob and I, plenty of other people about who the club is looking to build around for the future. What direction is this team headed in, right? And we had a few big announcements these past few days of who is not on that list. And just to go through a few of them, Niklas Süle. So now listeners going forward don't have to listen to my mispronunciations of his name anymore, but he's been big on the wage bill, extremely inconsistent at best, absent most of the time, and just pretty underwhelming. One of the more underwhelming signings in Dortmund's recent history, but that's going to clear up a lot of room for us to play with in the summer. Salih Özcan is next on that list. At first, I mean, still was a bargain of a signing, didn't come for much. It was like less than 5 or 6 million euros, if I'm not mistaken. Had a promising first season and just kind of slowly drifted off. Hasn't had much of an opportunity, even on his loan spells. But either way, the club has decided to not proceed further with extending Özcan's contract. So, of course, wish him the best. I still feel like there's a Bundesliga level player in there, and I don't doubt him falling at another Bundesliga club, but we'll see, of course. And then the last on that list for now is Julian Brandt. I've been back and forth on the idea of the extension for Brandt for the last year or so. He was one of my favorite signings in the 18-19 season, now that I'm thinking about it. Either way, he was one of my favorite signings at the time. He was an electrifying player that first season. I've sung his praises quite some time now, as long as this show's even existed. But Brandt is almost 30 years old. I don't think Kovac sees him really as a starter every single week. Of course, there's rotation there, but I don't see really Kovac really fancying him for being that attacking front line. He doesn't play deep in midfield at all anymore, and he wouldn't be one for the future. He would not be a player that Dortmund are looking to continue building around, with his wages, his age, his goal contributions and general output. I don't think it's there for us to continue working together. And I think it's the right decision ultimately for the club to respectfully and mutually part ways. And as Lars Ricken actually put it, this is actually also an opportunity for both sides, right? I've mentioned that, again, with the wages being cleared up, with us maybe looking at another number 10, even though now reports are saying Dortmund might not be interested in number 10, and we could talk about that more as time goes on. But either way, there's room for us to play with this summer for rebuilding. And then for the other party, Julian Brandt, there's just in the same way of Özcan, there's absolutely still a player in there at the Bundesliga level, at a very high level either way. A few more seasons, I think he's gotten him. There are several destinations that I could see him ending at, and I wish him all the best too. It's sad that, after so many years, it didn't really work out, but either way, there's still some great memories to look upon, and, I still think Brandt's, got a few more years in him at a high level. Outside of players going out, we do have another big announcement here of Felix Metscher's extension for remaining here. So Felix Metscher just the other day extended his contract to 2030. He's one of the bigger earners at the club, and he spoke on as an extension, mentioning having a great relationship with Kovac since their days at Wolfsburg. For those of you that maybe forgot, I actually did, that they both were at Wolfsburg a number of years ago now. Metscher feels at home and is grateful for the trust that the club has in him. I don't need to talk about, him as a person much. I've said it plenty of times before. From a sporting perspective, that first season, not great, right? Injuries had a factor in that, sure. Second season, pretty inconsistent, but getting there. This season, I would argue Felix Metscher is the best number 8 in the Bundesliga. I don't think it's even really close, actually, either. I mean, you look at number of other teams, including Bayern Munich, there's no one that really comes close to just the sheer ability of that Felix Mecha brings. His stature, 6'3", but he's lightning quick. His ability on the ball to make decisions quicker, faster, and more precise, and the right decisions at right times has dramatically improved. He's lethal with a shot on his foot too. I've mentioned that even in his worst days, he's always had a good shot in him. He's using his body a lot better. He's tracking back and making good tackles to prevent counterattacks in dangerous moments. So whether or not Dortmund plan to cash in with him next summer in 2027 remains to be seen. Who knows? There could be absolutely some teams there that come in with some big offers, but that's a long way ahead. We still got another season at least now with, again, the best 8 in the league. So midfield duo of him and Job, I've mentioned probably 50 times now. It continues to be a success, and it could be continuing to be something that we could be building around, So very, very exciting either way. And then last for team news in terms of extensions, there is still no decision for Nico Schlotterbeck and his extension. I believe the club was originally wanting an answer for him in January. Didn't happen. Now we're sitting here at the midpoint of March, and Schlotterbeck is still pretty silent on the issue. We can only hope and pray at this point. It's not looking great. I mean, of course, he should be the player, one of 2 or 3 maybe players in this whole entire team that you absolutely need to be building around. And for the reasons that I've mentioned plenty of other times in the past, right? But either way, of course, we will be updating you as we have more news, but it's all kind of hush-hush at the moment. As we wrap up the end of the show, let's talk about this last game before the international break against Hamburg. They've won, just a single game of their last 5 in the Bundesliga, but outside of just like the losses, you look at those results that Hamburg have had, and I've watched bits and pieces of some of those last games. They haven't been playing that bad. They've only lost to Leverkusen by 1, then they lost to Leipzig by 1. Some of their players are picking up more form. I know they're still struggling for a real number 9 at the moment. Damian Downs seems like pretty disappointing for them so far, but behind him, you have the likes of Fabio Vieira, who's been, on loan from Arsenal. He's been a real threat for them since the turn of the Rückrunde. 5 goal contributions, 4 goals and an assist. He's been their midfield maestro, and is as far down the table as Hamburg may be, you have to look at it again with the same mentality and mindset as against Augsburg. You cannot let the games come to you. In the Bundesliga, every team is going to fight to the last minute, to the last second of the game, and they can get a result no matter the circumstances. We've seen it plenty of times this season now where Dortmund are in a winning position and we walk away with only 1 point. We are at home this time, so of course that's going to be favoring us a lot more, and I'm still anticipating absolutely a win, but we just need to be approaching this with the right mentality. We don't have any other competitions, so far, whether it's Champions League, Pokal. So Niko Kovac has an entire week to be preparing for this, and there are a lot of upsides for that. So we have to use that time wisely. Hopefully we have maybe 1, 2 players returning to fitness by then as well. I know by the end of March, we're looking to have Filippo Mane back, but Reggiani has been great in that slotting in as well. So we have some youth there, some exciting prospects to continue looking at, but either way, let's hope for a win here and continue to build on the momentum that we've been building on, to build on the stability that Kovac has mentioned plenty of times before the season even started. And then looking forward here, outside of that, just wanted to mention real quick, we're looking for a live stream on May 2nd against Gladbach. So we'll have some fun guests for that too. So please feel free to join us for that. We'll be promoting it more as it gets closer. But that'd be a great time to hang out with some of the listeners, engage with the show. We'll be having some questions, maybe a little trivia plan. I haven't, finalized that stuff yet, but either way, stay tuned. And then I'm also looking to write more condensed season analysis for Dortmund that should be uploaded later this spring. Stay tuned for that. That'll be on your YouTube channel. And outside of that, feel free to leave us write a review. Be respectful, but please be honest too. I'd love to hear any and all thoughts you have. Join our Discord if you would like. Thanks for hanging out with the cat and I this week of writing solo. I appreciate you always as engaging with the show, listening to the show, giving us a spin. Always means the world. And Noda by Valby.